See that stuff? That would be helpful. Sure. I don't know. This is in a way.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're just waiting for a couple more minutes till we begin the service. For those of you who are joining us online, the family welcomes your presence. For those of you who are here, please take a moment to be sure that your cell phone has been turned off. David. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to start in about 5 minutes. If you haven't taken a moment to sign the registry, please do so.
Paul. Yeah.
Not going far.
It's on. Three, two, four. I'll stand here.
I appreciate it.
Ladies and gentlemen, at this time the rabbi is performing the ceremony of Kriya, tearing of the ribbon and saying the blessing. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time we are humbled and honored to have the Honor Guard from the United States Army for flag presentation and taps.
President of the United States Army, with great permission, please accept this medal as a symbol of our appreciation for your large honorable pursuits.
As the honor guard exits, again, we want to show our appreciation to them. And Rabbi Morris Zimbalist from Congregation Beth Judea is now going to begin the religious portion of the service. Once again, for those of you who are joining us online, the family appreciates your presence. For the many people here, please be sure you take a moment to be sure that your cell phones have been turned off. And if anyone just needs a service folder, we have some extras for you as well.
Shir Lamalot Esa Einai El Ha'arim Me'ayin Yavo Ezri Me'im Adonai Ose Shamayim Va'aretz Alitein Lamot Raglecha Al Yanum Shomrecha Hineh Lo Yanum Velo Yishan Shomer Yisrael Adonai Shomrecha Adonai Tzilach Al Yad Yaminecha Yomam Hashemesh Lo Yakeka V'yareach B'layla Adonai Yishmorcha Mikol Ra Yishmor et nafshecha Adonai Yishmor tzedcha uvoecha me'ata v'ad olam. A song of ascent. I turn my eyes to the mountains. From where will my help come? My help comes from the Lord, maker of the heavens and the earth. The Lord will not allow you to stumble. Your guardian will not slumber. Indeed, the guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. The Lord is your protection, a guardian at your right side. The sun will not smite you by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord will guard you from all harm. The Lord will guard you, body and soul. The Lord will guard your going out and your coming home, now and forevermore. Mizmor LeDavid. Adonai roi lo echsar benot sheyar bitzeni al mei menuchot yanaleni nafshi yeshovev yanacheni v'mal gelei tzedek lama'an shmo. Gam ki elech begeit samavet lo irara ki ata imadi shivtecha umishantecha hema hayenachamuni taroch lefanai shulchan neged sorarai deshanta v'shemen roshi kosi rivaya ach tov v'chesed yirdefuni Kol yemei chayai v'shavti b'veit Adonai leorech yamim. Please join me in the English in your memorial cards, the inside front cover with Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. I want to echo David's sentiments that he mentioned just prior to us beginning the service. For those who are joining us remotely, we appreciate you being here, and your presence, love, and support is felt by all who mourn. We just read Psalm 23. The words of Psalm 23 evoke different feelings among us all. Some may find it comforting, while others may find it sad or scary. And yet others might discover love and hope within its poignant words. And while Psalm 23 is traditionally read at funerals and associated with mourning, we are left with uncertainty as to whom the psalm addresses. Is it the loved one who we have lost, or could it be us, the survivors of our now deceased loved one? The psalmist paints a vivid picture for what we just read. Gam ki elech begeit salmavet, lo irara ki ata imadi. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no harm, for you are with me. From these words, some might imagine our departed loved one embarking on this new journey through the valley of the shadow of death. And since none of us have taken that journey, perhaps the psalmist is attempting to comfort us with the knowledge that when death comes, we should not be afraid, because just as God is by our side in life, so too is God by our side in death. Yet to some, this verse depicts the similarities of our collective journeys through life and death. It teaches us that there is complexity to all relationships, but we must continue to move forward with the faith that God is by our side, even in the moments when we seem to struggle to see beyond that thick shadow of darkness and despair. Yet a shadow is never possible without the foundation of pre-existing light, a light and a love that was formed well before any shadow could ever appear. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, "Darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that." Dr. King's words remind us of an unwavering truth. Life at times can be very hard and challenge us to find the light and find the strength from within to dispel the darkness. Death can pose that same challenge. Our responsibility today, though, is to discover a new light from within the darkness, to know that behind every shadow is a radiant glow of love and hope, to acknowledge that there will be times in our life when we experience both light and darkness, and to find the strength needed to journey through both. In many ways, Paul Bauman's life reflected this strength, both emotionally and physically. He was caring and more concerned about others finding that sacred light than he was concerned for himself. He had many different relationships with a variety of people, and everyone seemed to know him. Perhaps this will become a significant part of Paul's legacy. We must care for and be dedicated to things much greater than ourselves. And when we model these virtues, we help countless people move through the darkness of any shadow and once again experience the glorious light. Paul Bauman was born in Chicago. He lived on the west side until he was 10 years old, and then his family moved north. He was kind and caring throughout his life and always wanted others to be okay. During adolescence, I was told Paul was considered a ladies' man, but in the good way, and ultimately became a quiet protector of his family. Paul graduated from Senn High School and then worked as an electrician. He served in the Army as a specialist in the field of artillery and mechanics from 1963 to 1965 and received an honorable discharge. Paul worked as a mechanic before he and other family members founded Ascot Liquors, a liquor store named after his nephew Adam Scott of blessed memory, who passed away at a very young age. Later in life, Paul became a spirit expert at other liquor stores. He eventually opened his own high-end liquor store and cigar store in Glenview, fulfilling one of his personal dreams. Paul was set up with his beloved Adrian of blessed memory, and it was love at first sight. After a short courtship, Paul and Adrian were married on September 2nd, 1968, and were blessed to be husband and wife for 29 years. Together, they raised 2 children, Andy and Rachel. Paul was blessed to know and love his daughter-in-law, Kim, and his son-in-law, Ryan, both of whom he cared for as if they were his own children. In Judaism, we often wish each other the blessing, "May you live to see your children's children." Paul lived this wish and was blessed with 5 grandchildren, Haley, Jacob, Hannah, TJ, and Ruby. Paul was predeceased by his beloved wife, Adrian, by his sister-in-law, Roberta, and by his brother-in-law, Elliot. Paul is survived by his children and their families, by his brothers, Philip and Danny, by his sister, Renee, by his brothers-in-law, Barry and Harvey, by his sisters-in-law, Linda, Eileen, and Leanie, and by his close friend, Jan, and by many other loved ones. Paul was comfortable with whatever you were comfortable with. He was a quiet observer who had the ability to fall asleep anywhere. Paul would always say to Ryan, "How you doing, sonny boy?" or sometimes ask the same question, referring to him simply as a son. Paul would end cell phone calls with Rachel with the request for her to kiss the kids. When Paul became a grandfather, everyone called him Papa. The words "I love you" and "I love you too" were freely and always shared with Hannah and his other grandchildren and loved ones. Paul was giving. And if a loved one like TJ wanted a favorite food from a local restaurant, Paul would say something like, "I'd like the tortellini soup, but we need extra, extra tortellini." Paul was asked many questions by his family and friends throughout his life and always seemed to have the answers. Paul was gentle and playful, and as he got older and his health began to fail, he lived on his love for his family and thrived on the love of his grandchildren. When Paul needed to be moved into hospice care, Rachel was by his side, offering comfort, support, and love 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Paul was appreciative of all the care he was given while in hospice. He was thoughtful and called the nurses sweetheart. Staff would come in and out of his room, and he always made them laugh. He kept his door propped open so people could visit at any time. Paul was loved by so many people and is already terribly missed. Mina Shamayim Tenu Chamu. May heaven comfort us all, and may Paul Bauman, Pesach ben Velvel Razel, rest in peace. At this time, I'll invite forward Rachel and Andy.
So nice, you put that together beautifully. Thank you. Okay. Wow, lots of people here, standing room only. My mom and my dad would have loved that. Thank you so much for coming. Can you hear me? Okay. Thank you all for coming today to celebrate our dad's life. As we began to write this eulogy for him, take notes and brainstorm memories with my very practical, and please don't tell anyone this, but my real teddy bear of a brother, my sweet and loving sister-in-law, my incredibly supportive husband, Ryan, and our collective 5 amazing children, we confirmed what we already knew about my dad, how lucky we were to have him as our father and papa. Our papa, which became his name to all of us these past several years, was hardworking, loving, gentle, and generous to a fault. Our dad was not a man of many words. And although he was not a big talker, he was really a great listener, and believe me, he heard everything. We all know that he loved us very much. He always had our backs, even maybe when he shouldn't have. And no matter what the situation was, he was always glad that we were okay. Dad was born on July 20th, 1940 to Ruth and William Bauman, or as we called her, Grammy. She gave him his very first nickname. Because his skin was so soft, she called him Bunny. That name stuck for a really long time because even my mom and my Aunt Monica called him that, and they didn't meet him until he was about 27 years old. They lived on the west side, and that's where Dad grew up with his siblings, Uncle Danny, Uncle Philip, and Aunt Renee. And the family moved north after a while, in the city still. After a while, and Dad graduated from Sun High School. And from what we have heard, he was a real ladies' man. We always knew my dad was handsome, but when you hear stories from some of our relatives and friends, especially Granny Marilyn Snyder, they will confirm that Dad was the guy. He never confirmed that with us, but he would always give me a coy smile or an ever so slight nod when it was brought up. He knew. Dad entered the Army in 1963 during the height of Vietnam. In the Army, he was an artillery mechanic and a boxer, too. He would talk to Ryan about boxing all the time. And I think Rye was the only one of us who actually enjoyed watching the sport with him. I would only watch that with them to be entertained by my dad's sitting boxing moves. He would jab right, undercut left. He was like all in on it. And I could almost see his memories turning right before me in live action. It always made me giggle. He also told this story about being the sergeant's favorite and driving him around the base camp in Jeeps and feeling so blessed that he didn't get shipped off to Vietnam, while sometimes wondering about his Army buddies, how they were all doing. After spending 2 years in the military, Dad was honorably discharged for serving his 2 years right before the U.S. was going to send more troops over. He moved back home with his mom and dad and continued to work as a mechanic at Cars, Honda, and Grossinger. This is definitely the place where my dad learned to love nice cars and the art of purchasing a vehicle. It was really something to be seen, and you never, ever went without my dad to buy a car. He wheeled and dealed until he got what he thought was the best price. The funny part is he knew a lot of the salesmen, and I think they enjoyed the negotiations as much as he did. Right after the papers were signed, every single time, he would give us 5 pennies to put under the front seat of the mat for good luck. This combined with my dad's skills at conversing with any teachers that ever wronged me or Andy, mostly Andy, he earned the name The Big Guns. In 1967, Dad was introduced to who he always described as the love of his life. Irv Coven, my mom's boss, set them up on a date, and the rest was history. The story goes that Dad took Mom out for crab legs, which, by the way, he didn't like or eat. He preferred the turf, while my mom preferred the surf and the turf. He cracked her crab legs like an expert for her, and that sent her over the moon, thinking that Dad was so worldly. They got married on Mom's 24th birthday, September 2nd, 1968. Then Andy came along first in December of 69, and then me in February of 72. We lived in the city until Andy and I were about 5 and 3 years old when we moved to Skokie. We lived on Costner and Howard in one of the apartments on top of the White Hen. I used to pretend it was a castle. I mean, after all, there were 20, at least, dramatic steps up to our apartment, a balcony, and I could get penny candy anytime I wanted at the store below. During this time, our dad worked tirelessly at our liquor store, Ascot Liquors, which he opened with my Uncle Harvey and my Grandpa Willie. It was located at the corner of Irving Park and Kimball. Who knew that one day that I would live not even a mile away from there with my own family and pass it by every single day on my way to work? It's still there, just different owners and a different name, but all I ever see in my mind's eye is the red lit sign with the flashing light bulbs that said Ascot Liquors. We spent a lot of time there with Dad and Grandpa. They allowed me, Andy, and my cousins Matt and Danny, who are here somewhere, to take whatever candy we wanted. It wasn't just a liquor store, it was also a convenience store. And whenever we wanted. So much so that we would go behind the counter and grab a big paper bag, not just like a little one, like the full-on grocery bag, and fill it to the top with all the candy and treats we wanted. Not only did we go in and loot the place all the time, but my dad, my uncle, and grandpa named an Ascot champagne, house champagne after me called Chateau Rachel. I still have one of the bottles that Dad kept and gave me just a few years back. Back when we were in school, all of our teachers were grateful and so thrilled to see my dad, whether they had a conversation with him or not about Andy. Practically, the entire staff at school would get lots of wine. I mean, my dad would carry in cases and cases of wine for the holidays. And that's when you could bring booze to school. By the way, you can bring booze to my school anytime. Later on, in 1980, we moved to our first home in Skokie. Affectionately, we called it the Money Pit. If it wasn't one thing, it was another in that house, but my mom loved it. It had character, she said. So, of course, my dad loved it too. He was constantly fixing the leaky skylight, the flooding basement, and so much more. Even with all this aggravation, we had a really beautiful home, and we made really fun memories there. We also went on vacations pretty much every year, whether it was going to visit family in Pittsburgh or family in Florida or taking weekend getaways with just the four of us or with friends. For a few years, we would go to Nippersink in Wisconsin with our parents and the couples club. Nippersink was sort of like Kellerman's Resort and Dirty Dancing, but not really. I think the drive up, though, was the most fun part. Our dad worked so hard and so much and so often that having that time with him in the car was really special. Our dad loved nice cars and country music, and we would listen to Kenny Rogers all the way there. I forgot to mention that this was also my dad's cowboy stage. Actually, not a stage. To me, my dad was a legit cowboy. He had a Stetson hat, a couple of them, custom-made cowboy boots, a big old belt buckle, and he took dressage riding lessons to make it official. So his new nickname was Tex. He also had every cassette tape of Kenny and Dolly from here to Nashville. He was country before country was cool. At Nippersink, we loved the dinners there. We all got dressed up. And Dad not only could rock a cowboy hat like no one else, but he also tore it up with a suit that only John Travolta could wear. All white with tails. For reals. He looked incredible. And you could tell he was having a great time. And in case you're wondering, Dad didn't exactly dance like John Travolta, but he was a wonderful dancer. At any event, any wedding, any b'nai mitzvah, Dad loved to be on the dance floor, and he was the best lead ever. In 1994, our dad fulfilled his dream of opening D'Artagnan's Cellar at Caroline Square in Glenview. D'Artagnan's was a boutique liquor store selling fine wine, spirits, scotches, and cigars. We often joke that our dad forgot more about spirits and cigars more than any other people even know about. When our mom passed away way too young in 1998, we were devastated. Andy was engaged to Kim, and I was engaged to Rye. Dad loved both Rye and Kim as if they were his own. He affectionately called Ryan Sonny Boy, just like he did Andy, and Kim was always his favorite daughter-in-law. Whatever we needed, he was there, and whatever we wanted, he was there for that too. Both Andy and I got married in 1999, only 5 weeks apart. And Dad couldn't have been more generous and, of course, characteristically calm. To him, it was a happy time to not get stressed about. And he was also trying so hard to play the role of mom. He attended meetings about flowers, menus, photographers, videographers, and made sure that we had what we wanted, as always. Shortly after our weddings, Dad decided to sell the money pit and move to Niles. That winter, Dad met Jan, who he loved very much. They laughed together, they traveled together, and he was very happy to have someone to share time with. Jan's family welcomed Dad with open arms, even though he has the unbelievable talent of falling asleep anywhere, anytime, and pretty much everywhere. He enjoyed spending time with Jan and her family, whether it was for the holidays, taking trips together, or going out for dinner. We're so glad that he had someone to spend time with and to enjoy the world. In 2002, Andy and Kim welcomed Haley and Jake into the world, and my dad became a papa. His best role yet. What joy that brought to him. He loved seeing the Twinkies, spending time with them and loving them. He marveled at their similarities and he enjoyed their differences and was proud to be their papa. Soon after the Twinkies came along, Ryan and I welcomed Hannah, then TJ, and then Rubalicious, and the kvelling continued. We all visited the store, D'Artagnan's, a lot, as that was where Dad spent the majority of his time. Everyone in Caroline Square knew Dad, and therefore knew all of us. He bragged to everyone about us, and especially about his grandchildren. Of course, the visits to D'Artagnan were often, and I'm pretty certain that our kids are the only children on the planet that actually played liquor store. Thanks to Papa. TJ could actually smell the difference between scotch and whiskey at 3 years old. If you ask the 5 of them, their fondest memories with him are at that store. Anything from sharing lunch with him, to helping him rinse out his tasting glasses, to learning the alphabet by the names of the liquor and the wine. Seriously. Maybe I'll do that at Heller with the kids. He was one proud papa, always attending concerts, performances, games, birthday parties, and events for the kids. He loved seeing them all front and center. Every time we talked to Papa on the phone, the first thing he would ask was, "How are the kids?" We would go through each of them one by one, and I could feel his smile on the other end of the phone. He would end every single call with, "Kiss the kids." And we did. During the last few years of Dad's life, the Parkinson's started to take over. And when we were made aware that Dad needed 24-hour care, my big brother stepped into action. He gracefully and confidently made sure that Dad had the best care possible. He made sure that all his appointments were set up, that my dad was getting all the right medications, and that he was comfortable. Dad loved watching TV, especially any shoot 'em up movies or the news. Sorry, Kimmy, but it's Channel 7. I know. Kimmy works for Channel 9. We tried to get him to watch 9. It didn't happen. Dad and Andy probably watched every action shoot 'em up movie available on every streaming platform over the last 3 years. Last year, he made a wonderful move to Victory Center in Vernon Hills. We visited often and knew that Dad was in the perfect place, and this couldn't have been more evident than in the past several weeks. The team of LEAs, Life Enhancement Assistants, were so kind and so caring. They loved Dad, and it was evident that he cared for them too. As I told you earlier, Dad was a real ladies' man, and being at a supportive living center did not stop him. He called them all sweetheart, and he was always more concerned about how they were doing, and many of us told us that they really, truly loved our Dad. They would talk about his kindness, his sweet demeanor, and how he never, ever complained. Dad also made 2 very good friends at Victory, Dan and Pete. Dan lived right next door to Dad, and he was always watching out for him. He would wait patiently for Andy to come during the day and report if he had any concerns about Dad. His friendships meant so much to Dad, and it meant the world to us. Pete and Dan sat with Dad for meals, and they all had such great stories to share. We loved that he had 2 good friends to the end. Everyone at Victory, from the administration to the staff to the residents, they all always had Dad's best interest at heart. In his final days, the staff would come in droves to check on him. Some told us Paul stories, some held his hand, and all said how much they loved him. This is where Dad's newest and last nickname came from, the Legend. Every day, Dan and Pete would come to visit their friend, and on Dad's last day, Dan said, "You know, he's a legend around here to all of us." What a way to go out. Our Dad was a legend. Shortly after Dad passed away, the administrative team from Victory came up with a beautiful quilt and told us about their beautiful Victory tradition of covering the residents with it for their last exit out of the building. In addition, they typically play Amazing Grace when a resident is leaving for the last time, but they kindly asked us if we would prefer a different song, maybe a favorite of our Dad's. Without skipping a beat, we said, "The Gambler" by Kenny Rogers. My Dad would have loved it. He went out in country style with the PA blaring out. You can sing with me if you want. I'm an early childhood educator, so I don't care if you think how I sound, okay? You gotta know when to hold 'em, know when to fold 'em, know when to walk away, and know when to run. Count your, you can keep going. There'll be time. Dad was surrounded by the staff and residents, all standing, saluting him. It was a perfect grand finale for the legend. Right now, it's still hard to imagine that Dad's gone, that we won't be bringing him Portillo's extra onions with a side of Polish and a chocolate shake. The world feels really different right now. And they say when a baby is born, a parent is born too. It's interesting though. I always thought our parents were grown-ups right from the get-go. I kind of know better now. Dad was always a confident and quiet observer. He never complained. And we know we will never get over the loss, but we'll learn to live with it. So Paul, Bunny, Dad, Tex, Big Guns, Papa, and the Legend, your nicknames really say it all. Papa, you will be missed, and we will keep your memory close to our hearts.
Thank you, Rachel and Andy. That was just beautiful. Thank you both. In just a moment, we're going to fulfill the mitzvah of Ki afar ata ve'el tashuv. We were created from dust, and to dust shall we return. Once the casket is lowered into the ground, it goes into a vault, and at that time, I'm going to invite Andy and Rachel and any of the direct mourners who would like to come forward and place some Israeli earth on top of the casket before the vault is closed. There's a tradition that all Jews are to be buried in Israel. However, that we know that's not everyone's desire or ability. So at every funeral outside of the land of Israel, we bring a little bit of Israeli earth to bury our loved ones. Once we've concluded that, we will close the vault, at which time we have the mitzvah of taking care of Paul's final needs, which is filling the grave. In Judaism, numbers are very significant. We stopped 7 times prior to the grave site because we know, although this is the most significant mitzvah that we can perform, because Paul can't do that for himself, we don't want to rush to do that either, because we love him and we miss him. 3 is another significant number. 3 represents intention. When we do something once, it could be on accident, twice, maybe happenstance. But when we do something 3 times in a row, it shows our intention. And again, today, our intention is to take care of Paul's final needs. After the family has had the opportunity to place some earth into the grave, we invite anyone who would like to fulfill that mitzvah to place some earth in the grave as well. And if you're able to, please place 3 shovels of earth into the grave so that you're showing your intention and your love and your care of Paul. Mina Shemayim Tenu Chamu. May Pesach ben Velvel Verezel, our beloved Paul Bauman, go unto God in peace.
Ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who are joining us online, we are going to turn off, after the Kaddish has been recited, memorial contributions in his memory to the Parkinson's Foundation or the YME National Breast Cancer Organization. That information is on the service folder. For those of you joining us online, you can find that information on our website. At the end of the service, we're going to perform a shura, a double aisleway. The immediate mourners will pass through. That's the time you may offer words of condolence. So we're going to set up this shura, this double aisleway, and the immediate mourners will pass through. In just a moment, you'll be asked to come forward to place earth into the grave. Just please remember what the rabbi said, that the tradition is 3 measures of earth without handing the shovel from person to person. And also, please try to keep a social distance.
Kim, would you come up, please? And at this time, we invite the grandchildren forward.
Grandchildren, ask you to come next, please.
Thank you. Please note that after Paul's family places earth into the grave, anyone who would like to fulfill this mitzvah may come forward and do so. Once the grave is filled in its entirety, our service is not yet complete. We'll recite the El Malei Rachamim memorial prayer together, followed by the mourner's Kaddish. So after you've had the opportunity to fulfill the mitzvah, please remain at the graveside here. He's gonna move it in.
Jackie, gonna do it?
Thank you very much.
Watch out for the tip here. Oh. Watch out for the ground. This is really.
Sorry, sir.
No. Just.
The earth itself is quite heavy. For those who would like to fulfill the mitzvah and place some sand into the grave, we also have sand available for those who would prefer.